Hmm. Looks like I'm live and out of focus. Not sure. Oh, there we go. Now I think I'm in focus. Welcome, everyone, to Wednesday's Dharma Talk and Meditation. I am Christine Clardy. I'm subbing for Annie. Um, and I'm really glad to be here. Um, I am hoping that what I was thinking about in preparing for this makes sense. Um, I do have notes. I do have a plan. And then we'll see where it goes. um, so, like I said, I'm Christine Clardy. I teach yoga here at Sun and Moon, and I have had a personal yoga practice, I'm realizing, since 1995. It's been a long time. And I really enjoy it. It's a lifelong thing. If anybody's out there interested in trying yoga, you should try it. It's a little bit like brushing teeth, something that has to be done every day, even though it's the same thing again and again and again. That's what I was likening meditation to also. Science tells us that the more often we go into the meditation, like go to the cushion, go to the mat, the more we rewire ourselves to be in a state where we can be um, receptive and calming and find space in the parasympathetic nervous system where we can tend and befriend instead of being uh, fighting and flighting so often. I can see that someone is chatting. Good evening. Thanks for being here. I think the best thing to do is do what we always do, which is get comfortable first. So, whatever that means for you, the format that I will do is very much like what Annie would do. So, we'll center and resource, and then we'll kind of wake back up and chat a little, and then have opportunities for some sort of meditative tasks or experiences. All that said, I think it's really important to note that whatever instruction I'm giving as far as meditation, if you have a particular technique that you like, and you're just here in order to be in community, which I think is, I do that sometimes. I just need to be with other people. You don't have to be doing what I'm saying. You can be totally doing your thing and just sharing space together. So, with that in mind, we might take a community breath, breathing in and out, clearing the breath. Maybe there's an audible sigh. And maybe that's even part of your process of coming to the seat of meditation, hearing that audible reminder that you're entering a zone where the ground and the grace of gravity receive you, receiving the weight of your hips and hands and feet. In fact, sound is something that can help us stay rooted in this moment to moment awareness. So while we feel the ground beneath us, in the hands and feet and seat, we might also listen for sounds. See if you can listen for a particular sound. And then see if you can listen for another sound. 2 sounds. Can we listen to 2 sounds at the same time? Maybe one is my voice. Maybe there's a fan or something in your room, someone in the house. 2 sounds. And then is there any way to listen for the sound that's in between the 2 sounds? The space. And so the ground can keep us in this present moment awareness, and sound can do the same thing. So as we've been here for a couple of minutes, maybe there's some particular place in the body that feels a little uncomfortable. Maybe you realize you made a mistake in how you want it to sit. Shift a little, get comfortable, feel the ground, check in with sound, and then check in with the breath. In the same way that sound drifts in and out and weaves in and out and mixes with other sounds and with space, the breath is flowing in and drifting away. It's connecting you to this very space. It's connecting us together in a community. And it keeps us rooted in time. We cannot take 2 breaths at once. We can have this one and this one. And the next. And the next. Ground, sound, and breath. Notice that it's the thoughts and the mind's activity that tends to leave the here and the now. And we know, we have been told that that is normal. That is the function of the mind. We also have the function of will and intention. So let it be your intention to bring the mind gently to the ground, the sound and the breath. We can even give the mind a useful task. For example, if your hands are comfortable where they are, you can leave them there. You could also take one hand and place it on your belly over the navel and one hand over the heart, the chest. And start to let your mind feel the inhale going into the belly and the exhale rising up to the heart. Breathe in, belly. Breathe out to the heart. In fact, you might let there be a little passing back and forth of the energy of the breath. As you breathe in, the belly expands. Exhale, belly to heart. Inhale, heart to belly. Inhale, belly to heart. Exhale, heart to belly. Just the gentle undulation, the gentle movement, and the sharing, the weaving of the breath. As many times as the mind wanders, you can notice where it has gone and gently encourage it to return to the thing that you find keeps you in the here and now. Perhaps it's ground, sound, breath. Perhaps it's a movement, belly to heart, heart to belly. I also would like to take a moment to let this seat of meditation become a really wonderful place by using our imagination. So, in your mind's eye, you might conjure the image of very lovely and gentle eyes. These could be the eyes of someone you know or someone you don't know. Could be the eyes of something human or not human. Take a moment to envision those eyes in their color and their shape, their softness. And let's call these the eyes of love. Maybe they are the eyes of someone you've known in your life. These eyes look at you with pure acceptance. There's a gentleness and a softness and a kindness and abundant acceptance that travels from these eyes to you. You might let yourself return that gaze, absorb it. And you might notice what it's like to be held in that space, in that gaze from the eyes of love. How does it feel in your body and in your heart? We're going to remember these eyes, the eyes of love. So, again, in your mind's eye, give them one last connection. And then, with a little tip of your chin, and with your own gaze down, you might begin to flutter the eyes gently open. Return to the space, return to wakefulness. And if there's any movement that you need, if there's a different position you would like, you're always welcome to move. I gave a title to this. The YouTube asks me to make a title for this, and I gave it some very grand title, like grief and time and self-acceptance. So I thought that was kind of a lot. But the moment was there. So I wrote it all. I actually did encounter an article recently, and maybe some of y'all have read it too, that just this past month, this in March, there is a new diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, also known as the DSM. And that's a big fat book. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. And it contains the diagnostic criteria and the statistics and stuff and the codes and the numbers for all the things that we consider mental disorders. And it's called the DSM. And they have added something called prolonged grief disorder to the DSM. And I just read the headline and it caught my attention because my initial reaction was, how can you tell someone that their grief is too long? Many of us who've experienced loss or have done some work around that know that grief is mostly a process that we go through, and we've heard about the stages of grief and that kind of thing. So it was interesting to me that now there's a timeline. You can grieve for too long. And in fact, because I did read this in the New York Times, there was a lot of very quick and very eloquent and very strongly stated opinions, writing in. And I read through some of them, and it was really, really interesting. The first one guy right off the bat said basically what I just said. I've been grieving the loss of my wife for 6 years. Her hair is still in her hairbrush. Like, I haven't moved her stuff, and this is how I do it. And it's 6 years, and I'm great. Like, this is not a disorder. He used the words pathologizing. You're pathologizing my feelings. This is very stigmatizing, and how imperious of the psychiatric community to assume that they can decide how long grief should last. And that point was very well taken. The very next writer said, actually, it's very validating that this is in the DSM, because sometimes the process of grief does become a hindrance. It becomes invasive on someone actually going through the tasks of life and living their own life and taking care of themselves and of the things that they do still have. So that was really interesting. This person said it helps us as a society find mutual understanding of what grief is when it enters the DSM. And I kind of quit reading at that point, but I'm sure there are others that talk about the DSM is basically run by the pharmaceutical industry. And once you get a disorder into the DSM, then you can create a drug to treat it. And it's, this not very healthy system. Um, I'm sure there are a lot of different ways of looking at that. So, um, I'm not sure where I land on that because, again, this just happened, but apparently it's been in the works for a while. So, the truth is that the psychiatric community has been working toward this addition for many, many years, at least since 2017. So, predating quarantine. And this falls in line with the ongoing research into post traumatic stress disorder, that more frequent diagnosis and more interest in people understanding what that is, and the more nuanced understanding that we have of trauma kind of fits in with that. And interestingly, it was the World Health Organization that kind of pushed globally for this to for this prolonged grief disorder to go into the DSM because they felt like it would provide, quote, improved clinical utility if it were standardized, I'm assuming, across the whole entire planet, because it was the World Health Organization and that was part of their um, goal, was to get everybody literally on the same page about the parameters of grief. So that really caught my attention. And of course, as I already mentioned, most of us have had some touch into grief. Maybe it's something recent, having to do with COVID and quarantine and loss. Maybe it's a memory, from childhood. Um, but we all know that grief exists. We all know that we are capable of mourning a loss, and we all know that we can suffer with that. And after a great loss, time becomes very fungible, right? The great writer C.S. Lewis lost his wife to cancer, and he wrote a book about it. And somewhere in there, he says that his grief is sort of an invisible blanket between the world and me. And it can do that, right? It kind of puts us in this separate stream of time from the rest of the world. So when have you been there too long? When are you wrapped in the blanket too thickly? I don't know the answer to that question. Harkening back to Annie's talk from last week, when we talked about things that are soothing, right? And how do you know it's soothing? Is it just soothing, or are you starting to numb yourself out? So where are these lines is an interesting question, and it's a great topic for meditation. And in this zone of grief, is there a line in there somewhere where you can cross from healthy grieving into disordered grieving? Typically, I feel like in the United States, a very common response to someone who's feeling low or someone who's grieving is, okay, time to move on. Like, just go ahead, snap out of it. Um, there's even the British saying, oh, well, we just get on with it. We just get on with it, right? So that's a pretty common response in a community to grief. And I actually had an interesting and complicated situation, kind of like that, just this past week. A friend of mine sent me an email. April is Poetry Month, and she's a poet. And she sent me a poem, and it had to do with grief. And I'm actually going to read it. It's just a little short snippet, and then I'll tell you my reaction to it. It was in the New Yorker just recently. It's by a poet named Jim Moore, and it's called How to Come Out of Lockdown. Someone will need to forgive me for being who I am, for sneaking back to my blue chair by the window, where for the last 370 days I have learned that to be alone is what is good for me. I am pretending as if I really belong with those who want to return to this world with open arms, even though it has done to us what it has done. And when I got this from my friend, I immediately fantasized about all the wise things I would tell her about hope, and um, other poems I would recite. Um, or I could explain, that it's just your limbic system that's a little overwrought right now. Your prefrontal cortex is offline, and if you could meditate and just come back to a place where you could make good choices, you wouldn't feel this way. In fact, I have a few meditation apps. I'll send you the list. Um, there's no threat out there anymore. Like, let's look at the bright side. You don't have to wear a mask. You can take your kid to the playground. All of those things welled up inside of me, and because I'm such a helpful person. And it is our instinct, right? To try to be helpful. It's a little bit like the mind's job is to scan the future and rehash the past. I mean, that's really what it's for. There's a part of us in community that is meant to be helpful. Like, our intention is to do that. So I'm a super helpful person. I thought of all these things I was going to do. But then I had a really strange thought, which is, and probably because I had just read the article about prolonged grief disorder, I said, maybe all this help I'm giving her is just another version of snap out of it, right? So by offering that help, helping her feel differently, I am pushing her into a time that she's not, into a state of mind that she's not ready for. And I have made myself the judge and the arbiter of how she should be feeling. And then the layers got even more interesting, because at that point, I didn't go back to my friend with more genuine and authentic kindness and compassion and empathy. I attacked myself. I'm a terrible friend. I don't even know how to help somebody the right way. I'm so judgmental. Um, Am I a bad friend? Am I selfish? I definitely am. I suck at these situations. I don't know how to manage real emotions with my friend. So luckily, it became Wednesday night and time for yoga and time for meditation. So I had a chance to pause all that, which is where I think we'll take a little pause and dip into another moment of quiet to consider the fact that we know we can get into a loop of reactivity with another person, right? Like, if you've ever had a teenager in your life, sometimes, there's just this instant reactivity, but because you're being stubborn, or they're being stubborn. Maybe it's a colleague. The same issue gets brought up again and again and again. And at some point, you don't even need to have the conversation. You just look at a person, and you have that visceral reaction. Sometimes it's a person you've never met. You just know about what they've done because you've read it in the newspaper, and they're a politician, and you can just hear the name, and you're in this reactive loop with another person. But it sometimes happens inside of ourselves. And just like it leads to a loss of understanding and a loss of relationship between people, it can lead to a loss of understanding and relationship with ourselves. The great, I think she's great, Tara Brach, meditation teacher, she's actually local to here. She calls it the trance of unworthiness. The trance of unworthiness. So let's settle in, make yourself comfortable, and we'll take another little dip into quiet and thoughtfulness. First, by grounding. Feel your seat, hands and feet. Know that you're here in this space, in this moment. Feel the breath. Know you just have the one. Hands, feet, and seat. When you feel settled, allow yourself a moment to think of a place in your life where you feel inadequate. Maybe this is a project that's taking too long, or a project you never began. Maybe it is a relationship that seems to be repeating itself. Is there an area where you feel like you're not doing enough? Or maybe you're not doing it neatly enough, or quietly enough, or creatively enough. Any area in your life where you feel the familiarity of evaluation. And then allow yourself in your body, in your physical body, to see what it's like to feel this way. Feel the familiarity of that self-judgment, of that evaluation. Do you notice that it has a sensation like heaviness or jitteriness? As we sit here and quietly attend to that feeling, are there places in the body that clench or tighten? In the jaw, maybe around the eyes. Something in the stomach or the heart. As best you can, allow that feeling to present itself. You can use the breath to slow it down. You can notice if the mind starts to layer even more statements on top of the original. Is there a story? This feeling might be so familiar that it's actually hard to identify. Perhaps it does become very verbal, almost like a mantra you've gotten used to. A statement about yourself. I'm lazy, forgetful. But ask yourself, has this guilt or shame or blame or badness, has this attitude helped me become a better person? When I blame myself, critique myself, find my flaws, does it lead me to new action, to wholesome responses? If I struggle with anger, for example, and I believe I'm an angry person or that I have anger, does that knowledge make me less angry? Or am I in a reactivity loop with myself? Whatever the next judgment is that arises, breathe it in, include it in the circle of care. Let it rest with you in the gaze of the eyes of love. Those eyes that came straight out of your powerful and gorgeous imagination, that created a softness and an acceptance, radiating not just to parts of you, but to your whole you. Remember that. And now you might scan the body to see what it's like to feel that gaze. What is it like to rest in self-acceptance? Is there a difference in the attitude, in the mind state, in the body? And if you would like to, you could include new words, a new mantra. I am enough. I try and keep trying. I respond with patience. In fact, if the eyes of love and self-acceptance had a voice for you, what are those eyes saying? You are enough. You do try and try. You can respond with patience. And it is this kindness and acceptance that will lead us into becoming more accepting of another. It is letting go of this blame and accusation inside that will lead us into wholesome action, new attempts. We'll take a few moments quietly, reciting the statement inside your mind, or simply sitting with yourself, allowing the flow of the breath, recalling the eyes of love. Let's lift our hands and let the palms come together somewhere in front of your chest, in front of the heart, and rub your palms together so you generate some warmth, some friction, some heat, some love right out of that region in the heart. And when you feel it, you made it, right? You've created this warmth. Go ahead and take one hand over each eye gently, creating a little cubby, fingers gently resting in the hair. Feel that caress and that warmth. Flutter the eyes open inside. And as you breathe, you might slowly begin to lift the hands and let the hands, palms, fingers touch anywhere along the face, sides of the head, neck that feels comforting and caressing to you. You can land with hands on the heart or the belly. And the end of my story about my friend is a really good ending. It turns out that there's much more to that poem. I don't know why, but it got cut off. So the poem actually goes on. And it's in the New Yorker. You can look for it online. I'll put it in the chat. You can read if you want what it says. I'm not going to read it. It's not super long, but it's good. I'm going to leave that as a little curiosity, and I'll type it in. And if you'd like to know the real ending of the poem How to Come Out of Lockdown by Jim Moore, you could find it in the New Yorker, and I'll type that information into our chat here. So my hope for all of us is that we can find those places in us, on us, around us, that lead to self-acceptance, so that we can begin here in order to let others have the space that they need, whether it's to grieve, to be angry, whatever the case may be. When we can let go of our own trance of unworthiness, it's through that centeredness and that moment-to-moment awareness that we start to be able to get along with others a little more easily as well. So I'll close actually with a different poem. And this is by a Polish writer. And I find it really interesting because it was written some time ago, but it became popular after 9/11. And I feel like it's actually a great poem for now, because of global crises and just ongoing strife and challenges that we face as a global community. This poem is called, it's by Adam Zagajewski. I'm not sure I'm emphasizing the right syllables. Zagajewski, Adam. Try to praise the mutilated world. Try to praise the mutilated world. Remember June's long days and wild strawberries, drops of wine, the dew, the nettles that methodically overgrow the abandoned homesteads of exiles. You must praise the mutilated world. You watched the stylish yachts and ships. One of them had a long trip ahead of it, while salty oblivion awaited others. You've seen the refugees heading nowhere. You've heard the executioners sing joyfully. You should praise the mutilated world. Remember the moments when we were together in a white room and the curtain fluttered? Return in thought to the concert where music flared. You gathered acorns in the park in autumn, and leaves eddied over the earth's scars. Praise the mutilated world and the gray feather a thrush lost, and the gentle light that strays and vanishes and returns. So thanks, everyone. Praise to you. Praise to you. And thank you so much. Namaste. Oh, I need to type this in real quick. How to come out of your I'm not going to be judgmental about my own typing here. How to come out of lockdown. It was in the New Yorker. Go. Good night, everybody.